Hi guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Emmanuel Lens back again with another video. Before we even go any further, please subscribe to the channel. We're trying to hit 500 subscribers. It's been a long time coming, and you guys see the content has been coming. The content has been making you content. So I believe that deserve at least a like and a subscribe. So I'm begging you. I generally don't beg people to subscribe or to like my videos, but I really need to see those numbers going up. It's been going up on the views. I'm enjoying that, but they're not going up on the subscribers. Please do subscribe. But without any further ado, so the video that I want to do today is one where I actually want to react to another YouTuber video, but this one is about features that really do not matter. So Mark Bone teamed up with Gerard and Dan, went to Gerard's studio, and they did this video. I was probably like a minute in yesterday, and I'm like, no, this is actually a good video to react to, because I've been thinking lately about features on camera that really personally I think they are sometimes overrated. One being RAW. I'm not saying RAW is bad. I shoot all my photo in RAW. So if I say that about videos, maybe because I've never shot RAW videos, but I just feel like they are oversized. They're really huge file. They are heavy to work with, and some of them are software bound. So if you're using B-roll, it's only really works best when you're using DaVinci. So that's one of the reasons why I wanted to do this video. So without further ado, let's go into this video and just check what these two tech or creators are talking about, and you guys will be getting my opinion on it as it's going. So this is the intro.
Gerald, you're more technical than me.
I am?
Yes, okay. Absolutely. I go to your videos when I'm like, how do I fix this? There is so many settings and so many different cameras out there. Knowing what actually matters to your camera, I think, is something that a lot of people are asking. So I wanted to do an overrated, underrated.
Okay.
And this is inspired by none other than Jeff Nippert. He has a fitness channel where he does this.
I saw that video.
I like the fact that they credited
okay.
And this is inspired by none other than Jeff. Well, gee, I think everyone...
It's very important sometimes to also give credit to the creator that brought an idea forth, because sometimes with it looks like in the tech community, or especially in YouTube, there are a lot of tech thieves, or there are a lot of content thieves. So somebody will start something, and another person, maybe a bigger channel, will pick it up and just run with it without even crediting the person that came up with that idea. And this is very important. That this is a very nice gesture of them. So let's keep going here.
Jeff Nippert, he has a fitness channel where he does that.
So there is Jeff Nippert. So got the credit for what he started, But I think this overrated and underrated thing has been there for a long time, but it's important, and it's a very nice gesture of Mark to credit somebody who started with it. So let's keep going.
This?
I saw that video. He's Canadian too.
He is, yeah. Well, gee, I think everyone is on YouTube at some level. So, but I wanted to come at it from both of our perspectives. I use a lot of cameras in the field, so I want to talk about what I think is overrated, underrated for actually using it in the field, but I really want your perspective of what you feel technically, because there's sometimes that you'll bring up stuff about cameras and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm not using that on my camera. I really should be.
I like this idea, because maybe I'll change my mind and stop reviewing certain aspects,
First one, dual slot recording. Overrated. Oh, okay.
I mention it in all my videos in case people want to know, or if it's important to them. But for me personally, or if I had to pick, I would trade a different feature for this one if it was like
interesting. You'd trade it off.
I mean, if I can have it, I'll have it. And it seems like it should be easy enough just to have. So I'm not saying remove it, but I'm saying that I think that people who go like, it doesn't have it, I'm not buying that camera. Sometimes I wonder.
Okay, what do you guys think about dual slot recording? And this is one thing where a lot of my cameras don't have it. Most of my camera, at least the main camera, I only start having a dual slot camera when I bought the XT2. And for all the work that I've done professionally, since now, I've never shot on a camera that shoots on two cards at the same time. I can do it on the XT2, but I never even do it because I shoot one card will fill up and then I go to the other one. And I've never filled up more than one card. I know that for people who have had bad experience with the camera, that can be something very triggering and they would want to have it. But personally, because I've never used one until I got the XT5, and even on my XT2, I don't even use it, I feel it's overrated. Dual slot recording for me, it's overrated. And a lot of cinema cameras don't even have dual slot recording. So you have the Komodo that has that proprietary SSD. It's one. So the Pixis only has like that thing and the SD card, I think. So you understand for yourself that I think this is very, really overrated.
Really?
Yeah. I would have been this until this year, but on the film we've taken the pro grade 1 terabyte cards, put both of them in, we dual slot record, and then we pull that one card out at the end of the day. And you're never filming a terabyte in the day. You might film 250, 300 gigabytes because we're doing really long shots. And then I dump that card, but I leave the other card in as like a backup.
Okay.
So then we're still double backing up at night, but we have this, it's like this extra backup that's always sitting on your camera. I think it's that idea where sometimes if you have a bunch of people on set and you don't have a great system for backing up, someone can format a card that wasn't supposed to. And then you can always go back and be like, oh, no, we still have that, just in case there's the chaos on the day.
Now, dual camera recording. No, that'll prevent loss.
Dual base ISO.
I don't know.
You can hold up both if you're agnostic. For me, it's super underrated.
I mean, it can't be.
Okay, what do you guys think about the dual base one? Because I have never actually experienced that, but I think most of the cameras do use that. I've never been in a situation where I think I've been in once, and I was using a Blackmagic, and yeah, I really wished at that point I was using the Blackmagic Cinema 4K, and I really wish at that time that I had dual based ISO because when the sun went down, we were pretty much cooked, and I really, it was at the moment that I was like, okay, cool. At this point, I wish I had something that can record with which has dual base ISO, because after it got dark and even some of our lights, the battery was starting to run out, we were really, really cooked. So, but let's hear what they say about this one.
Overrated.
No.
It's just, so I'll give it a soft.
Yeah. I love your brain is really racked on these things. I feel like you only have like 3 parameters in your camera and you're like switching them out like
pretty well, you know.
No, for me it's underrated just because so often, especially on this latest film I've been working on, we're walking in and out of dark and bright environments. We're in a gym that has like bright sunlight coming in. So, and then at the back of the room though, where there's no lights, I need the FX6 is 12,800.
Right.
So to know that rather than having to mess around with NDs or even just hoping that I can push it in post back in the day when there was only one ISO, just being able to go to another ISO is super helpful.
I think that makes sense. I was going to say that so far I feel like based on your work would predicate whether this is important or not. Because if you have...
Yeah, and I think this feature also really, really depends on what you do, because for somebody like Mark Bourne, as Gerard said, this is somebody who does a lot of documentary work and is in very tricky situation where the climate can change at any time. Just gonna switch off my other camera. So the weather can change anytime. It can get cloudy and very sunny all of a sudden. So it really, really work dependent, and I have to be honest on that. It has to be honest, and this is a very beautiful shot, by the way, Mark. Really, really beautiful.
Full light control, then it's irrelevant. You're going to shoot.
So our next one, triple base ISO.
Like those cannons?
Like the cannons that are coming out. It's tough. I've been on set. I think I'm going to say it's actually underrated. I'll just say this. So it depends what the base ISO is on the camera, because on the FX6, you go from 800 to 12,800.
It'd be nice to have a middle one.
It's because then what's often happening is when I'm flicking over to 12,800, I'm actually then adding ND on, which feels kind of crazy when I'm like, well, if only there was a 4,000. So I think it's slightly.
I feel
maybe with you.
This amount. It's certain.
Yeah, that one came out recently with the Canon C80, I think, and the C400, the triple base ISO. So if you are in the tech and the YouTube realm, you should definitely get to know that Canon came out with a camera with triple base ISO. So let's go on to the next one, which is full frame sensor. I love this one.
Are you going to say, well, that's overrated or that's underrated?
I think
someone's like, well, this is a full frame. Are you going to say, well, that's overrated or that's underrated?
I think that it's underrated.
Yes, I'm with you. I think I have a theme with what I'm choosing here.
The reason I think that it's easy to have a whole tangent here, right? Where you're like, well, you know, the Alexa 35.
Yeah, I've had that argument with people. And
the question, you didn't ask the question, can you get the job done with a Super 35? That's not what you asked.
No.
You said, is a full frame underrated? And I think it is, because of lensing.
Absolutely.
I don't care about shallow depth of field, like capabilities or whatever. But I think that one is overrated.
Yeah.
Shallow depth of field, lensing options. Not that I'm bad at math, but doing math, why bother?
Yeah.
The 35 is a 35. Leave me alone.
Exactly.
You know?
I know.
There's some limitations where it's only possible. You know, like
to use
like a wide, like think of a wide angle lens. Well, what a wide angle lens even means, and then think of how wide a wide angle means on full. You know, there are looks now on full frame that just can only be achieved with full frame.
Exactly.
You know?
I find that's where people are like, well, you know, film was shot on Super 35 for many. Cool, but we now have this full frame capability. For me, I'll just put it down to this: is I absolutely am not saying you can't get a beautiful image or a beautiful film out of Super 35, but by the fact that I can then crop in on my full frame and get Super 35, the argument to me is null for Super 35 because I'm like, well, I can just do Super 35 on my full frame sensor.
Okay, I've never used I have used a full frame for photos, and there is a difference actually. I've never used it really for video per se. Have I? No. I had a 6D which is full frame, and there is a difference. Like, it's very noticeable and very notable. You can definitely see that when you are shooting with a full frame camera, especially when it comes to lens, as Gerald said, and you really, really feel it when you go on the field and you. So I was shooting recently with a Fuji X-T50, and at that point, that's the only moment I was like, I wish here I had a full frame camera, because I was struggling with my exposure. And I know people always say that it's better with the smaller sensor, the grain and all the stuff. Like, no, I was struggling with my exposure. And I know if I was using a full frame camera, I wouldn't really be having that issue. So especially when it comes to lens, when you go into like the wide angle side of the lens, you can definitely feel the difference. But yeah, I think at this point they're pretty much right here. So we're going to skip the sponsor ad and then global shutter. Let's hear what they say about
global shutter. This is my first overrated.
Okay,
there we go. We agree.
overrated.
I think just now sensors have gotten so good that rolling shutter shouldn't be as much of an issue.
You need a good shutter, not necessarily a global shutter.
Exactly.
It needs to kind of hit a certain threshold, I find, and then beyond that, I'm splitting hairs. You know.
What is the millisecond threshold? I'm curious.
I feel like it's around 15.
15 is where you're kind of like after that. It's
I mean, if it's really low, it's worth mentioning. If you go from 15 to 3, like the Venice 2 was or whatever, it's like that's worth mentioning. This is really, really fast. You know, sub 10, that's irrelevant at that point. Like, it's all good. And then something like an A7S3 FX3 body, that's like 8-9 millisecond.
Yeah.
And that feels darn fast. So
I know. I had a shot recently in the back of a car drifting in Nigeria, and it was like just doing 360s, and the shutter was, I couldn't believe it. I was just expecting to pull that footage off the FX3 and just be like, it's going to be like,
I'd say
Okay, yeah, I won't comment on this one, but preferably if we could put global shutter instead of rolling shutter. Personally, I would take global shutter any time of the day, because you just know for a factor that you don't have that issue anymore, especially if you use flash as well. So for photography, I think that's also very important. For photography, I think I need to put a photographic perspective here. So a photographer would probably prefer global shutter because you don't have that issue with the shutter lags, the shutter curtain. You can shoot flash at any shutter speed. So that's one thing that a photographer would probably enjoy if they are using a camera with global shutter. IBIS?
IBIS.
it depends how good the IBIS
I know.
is.
I guess so you can say that.
Underrated.
I'm just going to take a stance.
Okay.
I'll say this. I'm using like Sigma lenses on my FX6, and so I'm just never using IBIS, and none of my lenses have image stabilization. It would be amazing and fantastic if they did, but I think if you have the right shoulder rigs or camera sacks, then I think you can get by without it. I think people rely on this too much, and then when they end up in a scenario where they don't have IBIS, they're shaky, and it's just a complete mess.
It is a very useful tool,
Yes.
is what I would say. And I'd rather have it and use it than not have it.
Overrated, under 50 mil. Underrated, above 50 mil.
Yeah.
So I feel like if you need IBIS for like a 14 mil lens, something is drastically wrong with your camera operating.
What about those ones though where they show you can like run full tilt on like a GH7, then you're like,
Yeah, that's true.
I almost feel like the smaller the camera, the more important IBIS is,
True.
and like the
True.
bigger the package.
True. That is true. No, there you go. We have a lot of stipulations. 6K recording.
Okay, so IBIS, just before we go on to the 6K, is good because I have the 100 mil Sigma lens, which has stabilization in it, and I feel the difference every time I turn it on or I turn it off. So when I shoot with my Nifty 50 from Canon, which doesn't have IBIS, so definitely can feel that. But obviously we're talking about in-body stabilization in the camera, and none of my camera I think have it. I'm fine with that so far in everything that I do. I use a gimbal when I need stabilized footage, so I guess we're good. And then with 6K recording, let's hear what they say, and then I'll just come and comment on what I think about 6K recording. This actually came up at the beginning of this video where I reacted, and the reason why I'm actually making this video, and I really was hoping that they would make something like this.
As opposed to like a 4K.
Like if your camera, if it's like you can shoot, you think of like some of the Blackmagic cameras or the Red cameras, they can shoot 6K, where a lot of the Sony cameras internally, I guess you should say internally, they peak at 4K.
Right.
I'd say this is not about the sensor. This is what you can actually record.
Well, then I would say overrated.
Yeah, I would say so as well. Yeah.
Especially 6K, by the way. Nobody uses a 6K project. It's like maybe 8K, but even then, it's like 8K is a great medium to deliver 4K. That's really high res.
I know. But
I would rather have a 6K oversample than a 6K
delivery.
Yeah, just because that means that I'm likely streamlining in some way. I don't know. I mean,
yeah.
So let's talk about the 6K thing and 4K. This is where all the genesis of my idea actually came up, and I think it's not only 6K, but I think it's also 8K, and this is the reason why I actually wanted to make this video, because I personally feel like 8K and 6K are definitely overrated. So these are features that personally not so many people shoot in 4K, and not so many people, not 4K, not so many people shoot in 6K or even what is this? Even in 8K, beside MKHB. So 6K and 8K will just create a huge file size for you. That's one thing I really, if you are ready to manage all that file size and you have terabytes and terabytes of server or NAS at home, yeah, it definitely makes sense. But you also need the card to shoot that. So a lot of people use SanDisk card, and now ProGrid is also coming into the market. And a lot of those cards, they cap at 300 megabytes per second. So no SD card. And SD card are still kind of cheaper than any other type of card at the moment. So I think that is really, personally, I think that is overrated, like big time. So let's go back to the video, and then we're going to look at this one I actually like.
14 stops plus a dynamic range.
I love this one, and personally I wish my camera had a bit more dynamic range, and I think dynamic range is so valuable, so important. That is my personal opinion. Dynamic range is good to have, but obviously you need to know how to expose better. But if you have really good dynamic range, regardless of the of whether you're shooting with an 8-bit camera or 10-bit camera, you will probably get better result when you are editing. So if your dynamic range on the camera is really good, for example, in my X-T2, I think it's 12 stop of dynamic range compared to my 600D. I don't have it at the moment. I can feel the difference, especially when I do the video in log and stuff like that. So it's really for me very important. Let's hear what they say. I hope they don't say it.
I think dynamic range is underrated,
Yes.
and it doesn't matter how many stops you put there. More is better.
More
Always
is better. I agree. The quickest way to make your camera look cheap is to have clipping, highlights, or like shadows with noise in them. So I would say, to me, I've always said 13 is great, but 14 plus, it feels like a really comfortable place to be in terms of being able to pull back a window if it's blowing out.
Yeah.
So
That's such a beautiful shot. You can see how dynamic range is really helping here, because if it didn't have good dynamic range, I think the flow here would have been really bad. So you can see for yourself, there would have been a lot of noise here, but because he did, specifically he did it there, you can see for yourself. Let's see if we can bring more detail here. So you can see for yourself here, the flow is looking really good. So for me, dynamic range, really, really good.
Yeah, I think it's kind of underrated, and I'm with you that the first thing I'm looking at when I'm getting a camera is what's the dynamic range.
I agree. And then like how fast is sensor and can I use the camera? Like is it all, you know,
Yeah. This is a whole new menu system.
Yeah.
Internal RAW recording 12-bit. Very overrated. I've never.
Yeah,
It really depends.
Yeah.
But like if
same thing I was saying. So if you shoot RAW, for example, you shoot a 1 minute RAW, that will use somewhere around, let's say 5 gig, and then you can shoot it in HAVC, which will use 700 megabytes. Which one would you really prefer? So let's say you shoot ProRes, and then you shoot B-roll. B-roll will be always really, really huge. I don't know which video I was using. I was checking recently on the Pixis. Was comparing the Pixis to the FX6. I don't know if it's was Matt Johnson, the one who does wedding videography, and he was talking about RAW versus the codec that the FX3 shoots at. So it's really much more compressed and better to have those codec than really RAW. Let's hear what they say. It's overrated. Personally, for me, it is overrated. Dynamic range is underrated, and I'd rather have more dynamic range, as they said.
if we take like Canon, for example, who's been doing it for a long time, they're whatever they call it, Canon Raw Light or whatever it is.
Yeah. Raw Light.
They got a few flavors of, they do like a 12-bit internal. Their XFABC, whatever their like non-raw version is, it's always like a 10-bit, whatever.
422.
As many times as I've seen people trying to convince me, I've done so many tests myself. The 12-bit raw coming off that Canon versus the 10-bit, by the time you process that 12-bit, you're lucky if you get it to look as good as the 10-bit that came out of the...
I'm with you. It comes down to workflow. 422, 10-bit, XAVC,
Agreed.
It's been great.
And when we're looking at things too, like there's a sort of pipeline here from linear to logarithmic, and sometimes you're actually working with relatively the same amount of information anyway, because we're not talking about 16-bit.
Yeah.
That's the same image.
Yeah.
I've come around on this one.
Okay.
You should say what it is.
I'm trying to say, I know, I'm like, I want to pronounce it like HEVC.
HEVC.
Yeah, so high efficient video codec. This is probably one of the best codec for me, and unfortunately, the Canon that I use do not have a lot of it, and I always wonder why Canon doesn't really do a lot of HAVC. I'm clipping a little bit over there. So, but let's hear what they say. For me, I think it's personally, I think it's underrated, but I think they will say maybe underrated as well.
HAVC H265.
So I am now in the underrated camp.
Oh, really? I
was an H264 and was like, who gives a crap? But now I like H265 better.
How come? Convince me.
So I think maybe when I established my opinion when compatibility was lower, and so there was like aspects of my workflow that were just made more arduous. Decoding and stuff was harder and stuff like that. So it was like, this is harder to work with. It's when I do make an export and I open it up in a player, the player doesn't realize what it is, and then there's like a color shift. It was all weird. Most of that stuff seems to be ironed out now. And I believe that like they're getting better at it, and the iterations and cameras are better. So now I just feel like I'm just getting more efficiency.
More efficiency. You know? Okay, I can pay that. I just guess I was with it, just overcomplicated things for a while. I haven't done a 1-to-1, but I'm just taking a stance. Perfect. 422 10-bit.
I mean that's I guess in the
Yes, on this one I've used 422, and coming from 8-bit, I think if you haven't pushed the colors, you won't feel the difference. But if you have pushed your color and you really need your color grade deeply of videos, you will feel the difference as well. I think 422 is really underrated, and it's such a good thing to have when you have it that you will forget about not having it. It's really, really that's good. On this one, I'll probably just go because they both get the same one. So proxy recording.
Okay, proxy recording.
These days, I'm over here. I'm okay with the transcode and post or whatever if I need it, but I don't need to record proxies.
I don't need my camera to do it. Lens data.
So proxy recording. So it means that your camera is recording like a small file that you can edit with the same name, and then when you put it on your editing software, it will sync all the edits. A lot of computers nowadays can edit even up to 8K footage. So I don't see reason really for proxy recording. if you have a potato computer like mine, yeah, it can help. But I'm definitely also planning to upgrade my computer, so there is really no need for me to be a bit picky about that. I think it was definitely overrated. Lens data, I would say it is. It depends on how your technical aspect, how technical your work is. If you need those information. But personally, I don't need it, so I always feel like it's overrated at the moment, unless you're doing a review or maybe.
Metadata. If your camera is recording this and sending this down the pipeline.
My answer would be solely, I'll give you my answer, but it's dumb. Okay.
It's for you on YouTube.
It is for me on YouTube. It's like when I'm doing like, let's compare these lens test results, whatever. It's like, wait, what the hell did I shoot? You know?
I know. Instead of having the slate, But
if I wasn't doing that, I don't.
I know. I've never been like, what was this lens shot on? Full size XLR. If your camera has this, right away, we're telling you this is absolutely. Tell me, I need your perspective. What's the deal with?
I will also say underrated. Full size. I'm using the mic that I'm using right now. It's a full size XLR. I'm saying HDMI. And even full size HDMI, like I don't understand why camera companies will still use. And I'm going to probably make a video about that next. That will be my next video. So only recently Canon have been starting to put full size HDMI on their cameras, which is crazy. You wouldn't really think about that, but yeah, full size XLR definitely is something that you need to have on your camera, because if you can have it on your camera, have it, because it's really, really important to have those good mics when you are shooting outside.
Mini XLR and why everyone's moving towards that. Besides, is it just the size?
I mean, it's smaller.
Wow. Having a camera that doesn't have XLR to me makes it almost unusable for documentary, because then it means I don't have multiple channels, and then I'm relying on the mini jack, which is not always the best audio, and you can have interference or.
I would rather have some type of XLR than nothing.
Yes.
But if I get to choose, take up a little bit more space and give me those like new trick connectors or whatever.
Yeah, I know. Well, that's where I saw the Pixis and we just gave away one, and then I went and actually got the hold one for the first time at ProFusion. And I guess it just has like mini XLR on the front and like a mini jack on the back. And I was just kind of like, I'm going to need an adapter at this point for it to actually be a documentary camera.
Reminds me, I guess, of the Pockets, right? They had just like one mini XLR on the side, right?
Can't. The worst thing ever on a camera is mini jack, no time code. But I think we're going to, which is where we're going to get into next, time code in, if the camera.
Okay, time code is, so for those who don't know, time code allows you to sync your camera audio and visual according to the time they were shot. Simply put, so you have a device that can record the time when you sync it to your computer or to your camera, so it can record the time, and then it allows you to have people recording audio separately but based on time instead of being based on waveform. So then with that data, it's like a metadata as well, you can then sync everything in post-production, and it's actually a very, very fast, efficient way to do syncing in post. I think it's underrated, but I'm not at a point where I need time code, especially because I don't do a lot of 100 hours of interview with people being in separate places where the time code need to be synced onto the same. So it's not that much important to me personally. What is it though? Should I say it is underrated, because when I see the amount of people that use it and how much joy they get out of it, it is underrated.
Because of what we do, we're gonna disagree on this one.
Okay. Completely underrated. Tell me. So this is good because people might be doing different things. Why is it underrated?
So I've
overrated.
I've tried to make time code make sense to me as far as for YouTube. And you saw how I started the video.
Flashback. End of flashback.
Yeah.
And even when I have multiple cameras running, you'd think that it would be useful. I'll tell you the reason why it isn't. Because one, I'm not doing multiple takes.
Yes.
So one sync, I can do that by eye or whatever the waveform. And most people don't appreciate that there's drift that occurs regardless of what you're doing. So I've got 3 cameras that are all the same camera, and I have a Zoom recorder over here. And every time you bring this up, there's going to be 400 people in the comments with solution. They don't work. I need Genlock. It's not going to work, okay? Everything's the same. Everything's on the exact same frequency, kilohertz, whatever. The clocks are the same. Frame rate's the same.
And it drifts.
But after a really long time. And YouTube can be these long-ass 2-hour ramble fests, and at the end you'll be like 10, 15 frames out. Time code isn't going to fix that anyway.
No.
So I'm still going to be in there either rate stretching or just doing something to be like, okay, perfect. I can just sync it while I'm doing that. You know what I mean? I can just line up the clap.
Yeah.
If I was running around outside and I'd shooting 30, 40 clips or whatever, I could see time code being quite useful.
I think in the field it's very underrated, but I'm with you that just having time code in is overrated unless you have a dedicated time code box. Like we use the tentacles, and everyone just has one on their camera,
Yeah.
and we're constantly I have like a reminder in my phone every 90 minutes to like
Jam
be,
them.
like just because if everyone's in the room, what's great with the app is it just hit like resync.
The Tentacle app is fantastic.
Yes, the
I use it
Tentacle app
for
is
my pocket recorders,
Yeah.
which are just, they have time code
Yeah,
anyway, because,
yeah.
you know, and they're good.
Time code out.
I guess that this is the same conversation, isn't
Yes,
it?
I'll tell you why I
Okay.
think this is
I'll
useful.
skip maybe this
Is
part.
I love on the
Video
FX6
is
it has
not
that dips.
important to us.
Magnetic
I don't know. I don't know. And lastly,
I was
gyro-based.
wondering when we were talking earlier what I had a thought about
Yeah,
this. I
gyro-
think this is grossly overrated.
I did a video where I was frothing over it, and then you. What's funny, actually, I think it was one of the ways I got introduced to your channel. My video spiked and people loved it. It was the beginning of COVID. I was like, this is the best thing ever. Look at this. Like, I'm running around like an idiot and look how smooth it is. And then you did a video like 2 weeks later. Everyone was like, wow, this is amazing. But then you showed the processing time and all of the delays around it. And then all of your channel, because I think my video was recommended, came over to mine and were like, Gerald has proved that this is useless. And then my video slowly turned to people being like, you're way over exaggerating the use of this. So I think
I've seen some results where it's like, wow, you saved that. But
Yes.
then there's always little, it really depends on the shot. And you also,
So the issue I have with gyro stabilization is the cropping and the processing time as well. Because at the end of the day, you need to take your clip back at home. And as you can see on these shots itself already, it is cropping a lot on the shots. So you can already see for yourself how much cropping it is doing. So I'm just going to line up my screen as well into the middle here. So you can see for yourself, like personally, I probably wouldn't use something like this where I have to bring it home. And I'm all about efficiency and speed these days. And I'm not going to be doing something that would require me to sit here, deciding to process it overnight maybe, and come back the next day. So I'm already losing about 24 hours in my editing. So you can see for yourself that this is definitely not a feature for me. I'm personally not going to be talking and saying that this is something for you. So this is the end of the video. So this is the end of the video, guys, and I don't know what did you like most about. I hope you watched the whole video. You can always go back to Gerald's video with Mark Board. I'm going to try to put this out as soon as possible, because it is quite a long video. So please, I hope you enjoy it. Really trying to get into like more of the style of videos, because you guys enjoy this type of video. And yeah, please do subscribe to the channel. As you see, we've been really growing, and I'm very grateful for everybody that has been watching. I'll see you guys in the next video, and peace out.